from our perspective too, though. It's really funny, right? It's good stuff.
I just wanted to chime in for a second. I heard somebody say that Christianity is mostly white. The majority of Christians are not.
Right, majority of pagans aren't either, right? Like, that's not that big of a deal.
But when they're going to criticize white people, they'll criticize.
Oh no, dude! The majority of people with pagan statues in their profile picture on Twitter are either Indian or Jewish. Like, we don't have to.
Dude, you just said you're not going to call us Jewish.
White,
no, I'm not calling you guys Jewish, but it is just true. Most of the pagans are Jewish.
There's no Indians. There's no Indians posting Christian stuff online. I'm sure that doesn't happen.
Oh, I'm sure there is, but that guy joined and said the majority of
Indians?
Christians are brown, and the majority of.
Hey, listen, we're going to go to hands because we got a lot of requests too. So I think big tech has been waiting for a very long time.
Thanks. Hey, nice to meet you, Marcel. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, I've been listening.
Did he cut out or did I?
It's a double mute. You got double muted, big tech.
Oh, okay.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're here now.
Cool. I want to say 3 things. Maybe I'll just say 2 real quick. First one's real fast. The retort I heard when Adam had mentioned that the origins of Christianity and the authorship had an agenda about it, which was aimed at the Gentile world, spreading the Jewish, basically theological position of their God, one God overall, a God who has a plan and a law and a Messiah and all that stuff. That's an ancient Jewish concept, and that spread into the Roman and European world. The retort that I heard was, well, what about the homily against the Jews? Well, that was 300 years later. So what we're talking about is the origins of Christianity, which are at the time, it's got to be at least within the 1st century. So you can't cite something 3 centuries later as some sort of evidence that didn't take place at the beginning, at the origins of Christianity. And secondly, about that, the homily against the Jews was in response specifically to the condition of the day that it was written, which was that there was so much congregation between Christians and Jews. There were so many Christians from the church going to the synagogues and taking place in Jewish rituals and traditions. They were basically becoming Judaized. So what you have is that church father there writing a homily against the Judaizing of the Christians, because there was such a close bond between the Christians and the Jews. Even 300 years later, it was still taking place. So he was writing a document. He's delivering a message to encourage everybody to distance themselves from the Judaizing effect of intermingling with the Jews at their synagogue. So they were still hand in hand in each other's beds 300 years later, in a way of speaking. So that's my first point. So that would have been my counter to what was brought up maybe 20 minutes ago in response to what Adam said. So I don't think that was a good argument, in my opinion. But then, actually, so I kind of went long. I took a long time to say that first one, so I don't want to mic hog. Can I just throw it back to you on that first one? Who was it that had brought up? Is it John?
I think it was Real Truther who brought up the homilies against the Jews by Saint. Was it Saint John Chrysostom or
most people say Chrysostom? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I don't deny that. Yes, there was this Judaization that was happening. The point that I was bringing up was the fact that there is obviously, because the claim was, well, Christianity was created to make Christians subservient to Jews or to Judaism.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's not what I said.
I can't get a sentence out with this interrupting me. It's insane. I don't know. Oh, thank you so much. So that was the claim, was that Christianity was created for Judaism or a Jewish Messiah to be able to conquer the nations. Thus, the implication is that Christianity was created for Gentiles to be made subservient to their Jewish overhead. Right? That was the claim that was made through implication. If that's not the case, then I guess I'll give you a chance to clarify that, Adam, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yeah, could I take a chance at a stab at clarifying that? Because I'm familiar with Adam's position, and I see that you two have there's a heated nature to the exchange that's going on between the two of you. Like, maybe I can facilitate.
Sure. Also, I'm going to start, just so I can get, if you just want to ask a one and done question, say so I can cycle you down and bring somebody else up.
Sure. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Can I just make a quick point?
Yeah.
Someone brought up like how pagans have majority non-white or Christians have majority non-white. I just want to make a point, like the majority of the world right now is non-white. So this is kind of a dumb argument on both sides because we're literally financing the birth rates of Africans and other non-white groups. So of course most people of any faith will be non-white because we're like a very small segment of the world population.
Bro, we were talking about something and you're like really cock blocking it by going to a different topic.
No, it's just it was brought up earlier by that Danny guy.
Yeah, but were you called upon just now with your hand raised to speak, or are you just jumping in to interrupt?
I mean, his hand was up. Just
it was up the entire time.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess like all right, but
don't be a fag.
Do you mind
continue.
if we finish what we were saying before you insert?
Yeah, don't be a fag. Continue. I made my point. Continue. Don't be a fag.
Bro, these people. All right, so you interrupted impolitely, and now you're going to call me a fag. Got it.
Don't say. Just continue your point.
Yeah. Or you could just apologize and have some nobility and honor. That's all right. No worries.
Okay, I'm putting an end to that. Listen. Now I get the last word, and that's it. That's the last word. Okay, no more passive aggressive comments.
Cool.
Just move forward.
Thanks. Yeah. So the idea of the concept of Jesus or the Messiah. The Christianity itself having an agenda for conquering the other nations, it can easily be misstated in such a way as we heard a second ago, where the idea is to put the white man subservient under Jews, as if the idea is to make Europeans into slaves of Jewish people directly by making them into Christians. It's a far more nuanced and actually much more interesting concept that we're talking about than that. That's not it. That's a total mischaracterization. I don't think people do that on purpose. I think they sort of miss what's being said. And then when they say it and Adam hears it or we hear it, it sounds like a straw man. It sounds like an intentional reframing. But what I think is going on is a misunderstanding. Because what we're dealing with is ancient Jews who believed in their God. And their concept of their power in the world was through theology. So their whole reigning and ruling, or like inheriting promises of lands, and they literally expected like miracles to take place. They looked at their power in the world to be a result of their theological connection to God, and they were in a world where, like in that time in the ancient world, this is a superstitious world where people believed that gods worked in such ways. So the concept they were working with is that if these nations inherit our concept of God, our theological power will move into their lands, and it will give us not only advantage, but it will become like part of how we have under gods were warring with their God, but they believed their God would eventually reign supreme. And so part of the plan that was hatched up by them, by their theological, philosophical, like psyop warfare type of mentality that they had, was we can acceptable to the outside of Judea regions. So there was an adaptation of Judaic theology offered now into the Greco-Roman Empire with this sort of like false promise that's attached to it, which is very interesting. Like, you're going to get resurrected from the dead. You're going to live forever. You're going to have healing miracles take place in your life. You're going to be forgiven for all of your sins. You'll be grafted into an incredible promise that our ancestors had. All of this stuff comes along with it. Interesting that it's a Jew with a false promise. And then, but if you just start to believe, if you just adopt a belief in this theological system that we've created for you, you will receive all of these benefits, they say to the non-Jews. And what does happen is that one by one, year after year, century after century, it does end up taking place that the gods of the pagans become subverted and retrofitted into a Judeo theology. And then look where we are now. It actually did work. It's sort of far out, but it did work. So the point wasn't that, so you can't look 300 years later and say, well, the Christians were still resisting Jewish individuals or Jewish theology, or they were still arguing with the synagogue 300 years later. So that's proof that it didn't work. The Jews weren't masters over Gentiles or something like that. It's a far more subtle and far more interesting concept that we're trying to talk about here, about the theological subversion. So that was my point to that.
I got my hand up. Can I go real quick? This is one of
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
this is one of
And let me just a question, or do you want a dialogue?
well, this was one of the clips that Adam shows on his show all the time. It's a rabbi talking about the 9th of Tevesh, which is an event where they celebrate their secret Jewish infiltrators of the Christian church, the Apostle Peter and the Apostle Paul. So they're celebrating how they were able to infiltrate the Goyim and put them under theological repression or theological, control. So they brag about it to themselves, and they have one of these feast days in honor of it. And it's pretty sick, but it's right there in front of you if you're willing to even look at that. So it's right up in the nest. It's right behind the first comic. So you can just watch that clip. He's saying it himself.
All right,
Hey, Marcel,
Gracie, it's your turn. Yes, go ahead.
I got a question, Marcel. Hey, so if the Jews are connected by their blood, their faith, and their suffering, right? How are Gentiles able to protect
Sorry,
themselves? Like
say one more time.
okay, if Jews are connected, right, universally between their blood, their faith, and their suffering, right? How can a regular Gentile tell between whether they're dealing with a Sabbatean Frankist, a Jesuit, a Vatican, or whomever this this type of small occult, may be, because if they're able to engage in revolutions around the world, and 7 of the 8 billionaires in Australia are Jewish, most of the oligarchs in Russia are Jewish, they're able to attain resources, or gain the wealth from the resources in South Africa, and as far as the coal, or in the Congo, get the mines from the De Beers group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or in Haiti, for example, they're able
Oh yeah,
to.
well, no, listen. I got the grievance list. What's the question?
Yeah. So, how are Gentiles able to protect themselves, right? Like, how does Adam or Big Tech, how can we differentiate? Like, how?
Actually, no. I'll tell you what. You should read Culture of Critique by Kevin McDonald, and then you'll learn to recognize these things before they come. There you go.
Yeah, because
Great
like, if
answer.
regarding the culture, let's say, for example, Jerry Springer, Mari, or Howard Stern, these things have been demonstrable to the morale of the people. So
Yep.
why were we not able to stop that? Ban that.
We.
You should read Culture of Critique, and you'll find out.
Or the white man, or we.
You
Let's say
forgot Sally Jesse
black people were on
Raphael
the
too.
show. Yeah, black people participated too in the degeneracy as well as white.
I mean, it's not a religion. So I guess similar to monotheism, I'll call a single religion, because if you do it right, it sort of becomes a cosmotheism or a pantheism.
Got you.
Like, eventually, you should kind of hit on the insight that Sol Invictus and Ahura Mazda are the same entity.
Dude, you nailed
So
it.
in that sense,
You nailed it. That's so awesome. And I also just wanted to follow up by saying, one of the interesting things. Oh shit! I just lost my train of thought. One of the. I'll wait and I'll come back when I remember my train of thought.
okay. Is there anyone who will volunteer to drop that back to listener so I can pull up a request?
I'll go back to
Yeah, I'll go
listener. If you don't mind, could I say one more thing before I go?
Sure. Yeah. And you can lower yourself to listener when you're done. I don't want to double click.
I'll do it. No problem. Last thing. So, one thing was said. It was about morality, right? Where do you get morality from? And then the follow up was, well, Christianity didn't really replace the morality. There are things from the old world that were lost that I see as very, very costly losses, and it's really cool learning about the morality and the system, like the wisdom systems of the ancient world. They were very they were personal, they were philosophical, they were full of wise axioms. You can go check out the Delphic maxims, things like this. The old world had a system of how to be and who we are, and how to live wisely and powerfully and with gravitas in the world, and to have a very active and vital form of life, very human. And this was all replaced with something that could be boiled down to a weird slave morality. And some people refer to it as We lost the concept of knowing yourself, and it turns into sort of like losing yourself, and it turns into self-forgetfulness instead of self-remembrance. It becomes actually like in my view, in a way, an odd inversion of morality, um, a death cult disguised as a fertility cult. We are in a weird place with morality, so it's actually, in my view, very ironic when the Christians want to say, well, where will you get your morality from? When I find Christians to actually have a very appalling, in my view, form of morality. It does work, but it works in a way that gets us to where we are. And then I said I'll drop to the listener after this, and I really will. Uh, a little further, but related to what I'm saying, it was also said that what we're dealing with in the world seems to be a result of the decreasing of Christianity, right? So you can look back in the next century or two or three or even five, and you could say, oh, we're losing Christianity. We're falling away from maybe what Christianity used to be, what it always was, through what we might say was like the golden age of Christianity and the age of castles and, you know, these holy kingdoms and whatever. And now we're falling into this degraded sort of like vulgar type of life, and that's because we're losing Christianity. And isn't there an interesting correlation with the increase of Jewish power as there's a loss of Christianity? Well, the thing that's being left out of that equation that needs to be considered is actually what we've done is we've transitioned out of an age of feudalism into an age of these different competing economies as well. There is an economic factor that has to be considered, but when it's left out of the equation, it sounds like, well, all we have to do is go back to believing in Jesus more and like being more reverent, or believing harder, and you know, go back to maybe the true faith or something, and then the holiness or the righteousness and the family values will be restored. But if you're actually looking back in time at the golden age of Christianity, this was a feudal empire. It's a place where everybody was basically was like peasantry and nobility. So you'd actually have to go back to that as well. And I wonder if people are actually advocating for that, or if they don't realize that what they're trying to do is imagine what the world would be like in a postmodern, I don't mean postmodern philosophically, but I mean like after the onset of modernity, post-industrial, post-enlightenment, post-reformation, in this whole, in a capitalistic, individualistic world that we're all in now. Could Christianity even work now? I think that the lack of organization and the lack of power that we as Europeans have is because we're trying to be Christians in a world where Christianity no longer even works. We'd have to go back to a feudal world in order to be Christians again. And that's why we actually have to drop it as a matter of survival. We have to adopt a system that does work in the new way that the world works now, or we're fucked.
Just to say two things there, because I think you're addressing two of the things I said. You can check out, I think his name is Joseph J. Kotva, I think his name is, The Christian Case for Virtue Ethics. Morality of the New Testament pretty much strongly operates under a system that's very close to Aristotle's virtue ethics. So that was kind of the point there, is that like with Christian ethics, it does kind of replicate and resemble a type of pre-Christian kind of pagan style of ethics. And then own the point about is things getting worse because of Christianity? And you bring up like an economic type of mode of production. No, the point is that would you say that we're more controlled by Jews now compared to 300 or 400 years ago when everyone's Christian? There seems to be some type of correlation between us becoming less Christian and more controlled by Jews. That's not to say that the reason why Jews are more so involved in our institutions because we're becoming less Christian. The point is to say is that it seems to be not necessarily the case that Christianity is the reason that we're becoming weaker, more degenerate, etc. When we are becoming more degenerate, despite the fact that we are becoming less Christian. That was the
Guys,
point.
I remembered my point. If you don't mind, if I just jump in, because I feel like I'm gonna forget it. Really quickly, I'll be brief. But basically, what I wanted to say was, I'm not. I mean, I'm from a Muslim and Christian family, which is kind of weird. But from an Islamic perspective, even like the concept of like how Jews in Europe were allowed to engage in like financial institutions and practices that Christians were forbidden from, that type of thing was not really allowed in like the Islamic civilization. There was a lot more control over what Jews could and could not do, although they enjoyed like more security. But the reason why I bring that up is because I think that part of that kind of goes on the point that you guys were making, how it's hard to be Christian in modern society, and I think a lot of it has to do with financial practices. Then the follow up to that is another thing about Islam is that, one of the things in Islam is it says that Jesus is not the son of God and whatnot. And I was thinking, you guys were saying how the Jews used the like worship of a Jewish Messiah to kind of like you could say to control the Christian world. And in a way, I posted this recently. I said, sometimes I think it was the Jews who claimed that Jesus said he was the Son of God to disparage him. And I think that today, what you'll notice is that a lot of the people who are like diehard super Jesus are evangelists, but are also Zionists. And then the last thing I will say is that one thing I think people should check out is something called finalist monotheism. And it basically just shows how Muslims and Christians are both kind of being attacked at the same time by this Zionist organization. But yeah, thanks, guys.
Hmm. Okay, now it looks like everybody's been pulled up. So I see a lot of hands up, but I've lost track of what order they were in. I think Luca and then Walter, by my recollection, and then Frost.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I don't know Adam's like arguments well, besides what I just like heard on here, but like from where like where I'm coming from, it seems like if you look at the first 2 centuries of Christianity, you have to suss out that question of the parting of the ways, which I know is a big question in the scholarship. This isn't my field, but like it's a big question in scholarship. How exactly did Christianity disentangle itself from Judaism? Because if you like take concrete points, it appears to have happened very early on. As far as I'm aware, none of the church fathers, with the exception of Jerome, spoke Hebrew, or had a real like connection with that. And even by the time of like Justin Martyr in the middle of the 2nd century, so this is like, within kind of like living memory of the last of the gospel writings, he's approaching Christianity as a kind of inheritance of classical philosophy. He's not even, like, he describes his education and he says, I went through all the various philosophies from Pythagoreanism and Platonism and everything. And then I found Christianity because they answered questions about the soul, which are classical questions. And thus it is that I am a philosopher, right? So, and he says, like all this philosophy was taught before by Plato and by Socrates and by Aristotle, and it was foretold too among the barbarians, and he means the Jews by that. But that sort of shows you the kind of distance that we have already at that point, like really early on in the church. Like most of the systems that we would know that Christianity is characterized by haven't actually come into being at that point. So, and then by the end of the 2nd century, I think the general consensus is that the parting of the ways has happened entirely. So I guess it's not just like 4th century and 5th century anti-Jewish screeds by Chrysostom or whatever. It's like right at the beginning of Christianity, you already see the separation and this alliance of Christianity with the Greco-Roman past. And I find it very hard to draw like clear connections between or clear like so even like influence at that point or discussion between the Hebrew world and the Christian world. I don't know what Adam's thoughts are on that.
As early as Paul, it was already Pauline Christianity was all he was the apostle to the Gentiles. The Jew, Jesus wasn't even for the Jews. He says, has God abandoned his people? God forbid, but that all of Israel will be saved in the end. According to Paul, from the scriptures, it said that the Jews are meant to reject Jesus. It's Isaiah 53 says he's despised and rejected. In Wisdom of Solomon, it says the Jews condemned him to a shameful death, and they did not, because of their wicked ways, and they did not understand the mysteries of God. And this is a pre-Christian text, by the way, the Wisdom of Solomon, that says that about the guy that claimed to be the Son of Man. So even as early as Paul, so as early as we know of New Testament Christianity, it was already being targeted for the Gentile world. That's why all of the New Testament is also written in Greek also. In the Gospels especially, this is not a religion for Jews to adopt. It speaks against the Jews. And it talks about the Great Commission is going out to the Gentiles. The centurion is the good Gentile believer. It's a religion that they were trying to appeal to Gentiles, not to Jews, from as early as Paul, which is like as early as we know.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
There's
So I would say that you can. I would say you are half correct. I mean, right now you're citing Romans like 9 through 11, right? But what you're not realizing is that Paul does talk about how that like how Israel will eventually be grafted in Romans 11:32, if I remember correctly. I wrote a paper on that a while back. But yeah, I would say that yeah,
But but
the
but he says that they're hardened and they stumbled, and he
correct.
cites the Psalms because this they were blinded,
Hmm.
right? But that their transgression and them being the natural branches being cut off is for the Gentiles to be grafted in to the Jewish covenant.
Yes, yeah. So I would say a really good book to read on this is Matthew Thiessen's Judaism at the End of History, which came out with Cambridge University Press in 2024. And it discusses a lot about how this idea, what you're really doing right now is, as much as you would hate to realize it, you are falling into the traditional Christian mindset about Paul. When scholars now recognize that Paul was a Hebrew among Hebrews, as he says in Philippians, right? A Benjamin of Benjamite, right? You are inadvertently positing the Christian mindset, even though you're trying not to. When people like Matthew Thiessen and other many scholars, Paula Fredrickson, they've shown how Paul is very much a Jew. For instance, let's take Romans 2 through like 5, where
Wait a second. Hold on. I think you're mischaracterizing. I know Paul was Jewish.
no,
He
no,
thought he
I
was
know,
on a
no,
mission
but
to take
what you're
the
saying is that
Messiah to the
you are
Gentiles.
you have posited, totally asserted that Christianity was in the 50s was already not looking to bring Jews in, which is totally untrue, right? Hence why Paul gets in these sort of debates with the Judaizers. Now these Judaizers, as Matthew Feast and other people have argued, are not Jews themselves. They are Christians that are enacting Jewish law, right? So Paul is saying, hey, if you're Jewish, like we want you to be here, but like like you can't bring your stuff with you. And hey, if you try and make other Christians to adopt Jewish stuff, it's like nah, like that's for you guys. Paul never is saying that Jewish practices are invalid or they're superseded by Christ. That's a later Markan invention, perhaps. Paul is saying, in fact, that you have this special these special practices that are yours and they're not for Gentiles. Because Gentiles, unfortunately, they kind of got the short stick. They're not the chosen people. And so this is Paul's idea in Romans 2 through 5. So Gentiles have to have salvation through Christ. They can't have salvation through the law. So Paul doesn't, in fact, like denigrate Judaism or Jewish people. He, in fact, denigrates Gentiles repeatedly, over and over and over and over. Gentiles by nature are not saved. Gentiles by nature do not have grace. Ekphusis do not have grace. Right. This is continuously in Romans 2 through 5. And then as well, I mentioned Romans 9 through 11, where Paul looks at the Gentile mission as a means for all of Israel to be saved.
Exactly. I agree with you completely. I've read Paula Fredrickson's
Mm-hmm.
the pagan apostle, and
Sure.
she explains there just what the New Testament says is that Paul was a Jew who wanted the Gentiles to follow the Jewish Messiah. Like that is the whole conspiracy in a nutshell. His understanding of the scriptures and the first Christians was that this Messiah was for the Gentiles to put their hope in him, like it says in Isaiah 42.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another book I read called Paul Was Not a Christian, the original message of the misunderstood apostle, written by some Jew named Eisenbaum. But she
Okay.
explains how Paul exactly all of the things you just said right there is what she outlines. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm in agreement. He wasn't like anti-Judaism. He wasn't anti-Semitic.
Okay, right. But you're acting like he wasn't trying to bring Jews into the religion when his whole point of going to
His whole
Gentiles.
mission was to be, yeah, no, his whole mission from him on, he was as far as we know, he was the innovator, and he believed his mission that he was chosen in the womb was to be the apostle to the Gentiles. And
Yes,
this is why he came up with this. You can
that's
see from
correct.
the scriptures where he would get this from.
Hmm.
But the Jews had like a dilemma. Okay, they had their prophecies is that all the nations are going to believe in the God of Israel, but
Hmm.
they don't want the Gentiles to all convert into Judaism.
Well,
So Christianity was the
that's definitely not
solution
true.
to that problem.
Conversion was going on. I mean, I would recommend Shlomo Sand's chapter like 2 or 3 in his invention of the Jewish people. He discusses how conversion was going on throughout Judaism's history. This largely began with the Alexander the Great stuff, and then this continued well into the like Middle Ages. In fact, our earliest mention of Judaism by any Roman author is, I believe, it's Cicero talking about how Jews are converting people. So no, Jews
Right,
loved conversion.
right. But
This was a big
they
thing,
didn't.
right? So I
Not,
don't.
not in the first
Yes, no,
century though,
most no, no,
and
no,
not
no, no,
all
no, no,
Jews.
no. Okay, so now I
It's
would.
not a
Okay,
monolithic
now
view.
I would
It's not a
recommend.
monolith. Hold on, let me.
All right,
They just like Jews today aren't looking for converts,
you
but
okay?
this is the
Oh,
thing. They're
okay. So
hold on, can I
that
finish
was an
my
insane
point real
statement
quick?
you made. So you said because Jews today
Can I
are
fin-
not doing something, Jews in the first century weren't.
No, that's not at all what I said.
Okay,
You're
sorry. Okay,
completely
well,
twisting.
you posited an
Okay, can I
analogy which
explain?
is
Let me
totally
clear
like
this up.
anachronistic.
Let me let me clear this up for you.
Yeah, clear it up. Sorry.
So there were some Gentiles that were interested in Judaism. They saw it as foreign and Eastern and stuff. So they were called God-fearers. But not
Correct.
all the Jews
Sure.
wanted Gentiles to convert to their thing because they're the chosen people.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it's even in Kevin McDonald's book. He talks about the
Yeah.
people that shall dwell alone and be kept
Sure.
separate. So they don't want all the
Sure.
Gentiles. Just like today, a lot of Jews don't want people to
Right.
convert. Back
Right.
then, there were a lot of Jews that didn't
Right.
want
So
Gentiles to
right.
convert.
So
That was the
yes.
point.
Yeah. Okay. I agree that there were debates on Gentile conversion. There's many papers on the different positions on Gentile conversion. You have different Jewish intellectuals in the first century and the second century talking about this. You have rabbinic texts or and the early Babylonian Talmud stuff like that. Right. But to say that there wasn't this like recognition among Jews that Gentiles could be converted is incorrect. And there's a really
No,
good
they
book.
could. They could as Noahides. That's what Acts 15 in the Jerusalem Council talks about. There's
Hmm.
this like proto Noahide list
Hmm.
where no blasphemy, no idol worship, but
Hmm.
they didn't need to circumcise or keep kosher or even celebrate the Sabbath.
Hmm.
So it wasn't converting to Judaism. They didn't want them to. This was the solution to bring as Paula Frederickson says, to bring in the Gentiles to their eschatological, like end times view as Gentiles believing in the God of Israel. So that's what I always
Hmm.
talk about.
Hmm.
Christianity and Islam are basically proto Noahide religions that are worshiping the God of Israel.
So again, I think that your statement that Jews were not trying to convert people is an insane statement. There were many debates on Jewish conversion going on in the
Listen,
first
I
century
didn't say
CE
that.
and
I didn't
BC.
say there are no Jews that were doing conversions. That's not what I said.
Okay, no, all right, sorry. What you said was you said that
Paul was
Judaism was not
proselytizing.
a religion of converting people. They did not want Gentiles to be converted. That's what you said.
Many of them, like you think the Pharisees were trying to convert Gentiles? That wasn't their agenda. They want them to be
Right. So
Noahide.
right.
Paul was
So what?
proselytizing. Paul was the
Yeah.
proselytizer of a form of messianic apocalyptic
Yes.
Judaism
Yes.
for the
Yes.
Gentiles. That's what
Yes.
Christianity is. Are you a
Yes.
Christian?
Yeah, I am. I'm Orthodox.
And you acknowledge that Christianity is just a Jewish Noahide sect for Gentiles?
Yeah. I mean, as an Orthodox, you like rely on later tradition, and you talk about okay, well, the fathers saw this in the text, and then you don't have to rely on like the misunderstandings of the earliest Christians.
Even though they contradict each other.
Well, there you
What
go
do you
then.
mean? The
Christianity is a
Bible?
Jewish
Yeah, of
sect.
course the Bible contradicts. Yeah, of course.
No, no, no. I'm saying that the church fathers that the Orthodox rely on, they all contradict one another.
I mean, I would say that they don't really contradict each other on big things. I mean, like when we look at
So
let's take. I'm a
universalism is
universalist.
not a
I'm a
big thing.
universalist. I'm a huge universalist. I've
No, are
written.
you are you that you realize, are you an origin
Yeah,
universalist or
I'm a
what?
huge Origin fan. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you realize that his idea of universalism was condemned by Saint
Yeah.
Maximus, right?
Saint Maximus the Confessor.
Yeah, the one who wrote
Maximus.
The
No.
one who wrote 2 treatises, Ambiguum 7 and
Yeah.
Athanasium
Yep.
63, says, section 7, to try to syncretize Gregory of Nyssa with his eschatology to
Hmm.
refute organism. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, that just showed me how you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so when someone's talking about Origenism, they're not talking about Origen, the guy that lived in the 3rd century CE. I've written 70 pages on the Fifth Ecumenical Council and the councils leading up to the reception of Origen. So I'm quite knowledgeable on this topic. If you really want to talk about Origenism and the difference between Origenism and Origin, I'm happy to. But
I mean, if
you
it's
know,
cool if the other, I don't want to talk about that
yeah,
specifically,
yeah.
but
I
I
mean,
want to
I don't
show
want to get
you how
off. So yeah.
because I was Orthodox for 19 years. So if the other guys are cool with me, like kind of tackling you on Orthodoxy, I'll do it.
Okay, sure. I mean, yeah,
We got hands, so let's not do that.
yeah, yeah.
I
All
also
right,
want to
all right.
mention the book club starts in 1 hour from now. I'm probably going to close the space in 30 minutes just to give myself time to prep.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, hey,
Sigmundson, I just followed you or whatever. You should follow me as well, and you guys can do like an orthodox talk or whatever. But we talk about these topics all the time, and you sound like you're able to actually have the conversation without being a spurg. So you should come over and talk to us. We don't often get people that are able to actually like articulate a point properly. So
yeah, I mean,
All right, just make sure everyone
sounds
to
fine.
hit my icon and then go into the bio and then join the book club.
Okay,
And we need to
PFBC.
You're
get you
really
vetted.
quiet. It sounds
She's
like
really
your
quiet,
mic's
but
Yeah, you're really quiet
underwater.
right now.
that account, Property and Freedom Book Club, is the account for the book club. So click that, and you'll see a Discord link there.
Cool. Is the book club going to be on Austrian Econ?
No,
I haven't read Austrian Econ in a
No,
while.
hell no. I would no. They're not doing that
All right, I
research.
better say I haven't done Austrian Econ since like 2020.
That's when most people stop doing it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. I was
Okay,
part of
first
that
of all,
whole
I
TikTok
disavow
trend.
that. I disavow that entire exchange just there.
Doomer. I
What's up?
remember you from like 2019, man. TikTok.
Really?
Yeah, Polytalk. Yeah.
Really? That's interesting. Oh, I just
Yeah,
debated Cam Higby.
we can talk. I was a figure on there, but
okay.
I'm a non now.
You guys
I'm a
have to
non
get
now.
vetted. I just want to remind, there's a vetting process. So definitely,
Yeah.
the space is going to close in 15 or a half hour so that we can get our new
Yeah.
entrants through in time.
To close now because
Sounds good.
Your mic is still fucked up. No one
but
can
what
hear
she's saying
you.
is just end the space now, since there's a lot of people joining.
Yes.
Okay, so
go and join the book club because we will continue this.
okay.
Yes.
She's saying everyone join the book club, and then you can continue the discussion. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry, everybody. So, as she says, join the book club. So for those of you who did, talk to you in about an hour.
Log house.
I don't even want to hear that. All right.